I have to I said, this is stupid, and I make myself wake up at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm not going back to sleep. I don't want to mess with that anymore. That's not me. That's, whatever's going on inside me. So Descartes comes to the revelation, at least if I get rid of everything else, I have to be real because I'm the one who's thinking all of this stuff. According to Rene, we only have access to our own minds. This creates a problem with the external world. Outside of myself, how do I know that anything else is really real? So we have the idea of the really real dreams, super real dreams, until we wake up. Well, then we have to put ourselves back in the matrix. How do we know we're not in the matrix? Bank of America thinks we are, 20 to 50%. Tech billionaires think we are, trying to prove how to get out of it. Of course, we asked ourselves that question 2 weeks ago. What difference does it make if you're in a matrix unless someone tells you you're in a matrix and shows you the way out? Or maybe it's just a door to another matrix just to fool us, to give us freedom. And we find ourselves in the same box, it's just got different words to it. The fallacy with Rene Descartes' thinking, just because I can think about something doesn't make it real. I can think about unicorns, they're not real. I can think about space travel. How do you know space travel's not real yet, people? Going to the moon is not space travel. Was traveling through space, but I wouldn't call it space travel. When I can go from one galaxy to the next, that might qualify. Or maybe one universe to the next, interstellar, that might qualify. So we even have these terms that describe the world we live in, and yet they need some modification as well. How about artificial intelligence? Is it really real? How many of you know computer? I don't know if you know this or any of you take computer science? This screen you see is nothing but ones and O's. It's called binary language. And they're written in certain sequences. And when we put those sequences together, you see this. In computer language, it's called a GUI, Graphic User Interface. And you see this. It's just ones and O's. It's written in different languages. It can be written in Python. It can be written in some of the Microsoft languages. But it's just ones and O's. And that's how we train artificial intelligence. We build it in. It's a program. Does it make AI human? If we synthesize the two, do we create a new species like the Borg? We have now figured out how to teach AI to teach itself. That's the concern that people have with AI. We're teaching machines to do work for us, but we're also teaching machines to think for themselves, to learn from themselves. I don't know if I'd call that thinking, but it's certainly learning from itself. We taught AI to play chess. And if I remember this right, it beat our best champion so far. And it did it within a couple of weeks, I think, or a month. Of course, it goes much faster than we go. It can do computations in billions of seconds. What would that do to cogito ergo sum? We now literally have, I don't mean to be rude, people, we literally now have, Japan has a brothel with sex robots in it. I don't know if it's legal yet, but they just came out and said they finally have one. Sex with robots. What am I missing in this reality that we're building around us? We may get so good in it that you might sit next to a cyborg and not know it. What's a cyborg? Half human, half robot. It looks just like us. Might even be able, I don't know what they do with the food, but they can have intercourse, evidently. They might get really good at this. Have little, expository systems, just like we do, Now, do we give them special bathrooms? They're not really us, are they? They think like us, they talk like us, they walk like us. They might even be better than us. iRobot, where they decide to take over humans because humans aren't good enough to take care of themselves. Knowledge then becomes the key to the future. Has anybody really thought about the repercussions of AI? Well, there's people out there that really are. They're really, really concerned that we're so good at it, we might create a species, not a human species, but a species that could well replace us, see us as ineffective. Maybe yes, maybe no. So I'm going to introduce you to the Western part of philosophy now, what I've shared with you so far. On your quiz, you can't data mine it. You have to have been listening to the lecture. We're recording it so you can go back and review it. Today we want to talk about what is philosophy and how do you think and write philosophically. I should be able to do that. There you go. Philosophy is two words in the Greek. It's philos and sophia. Sophia means wisdom. Philosophia. Philos is one of three Greek words that mean love. There's eros, which is the physical love that can turn into intercourse. There's agape love, which is a love that comes without conditions. And then there's philos, which is an affection for a person or a thing. So if you have a best friend, you have philos for them. Or if you have an affection for low-fat Publix frozen yogurt, you have a philos for that. Philosophia. Literally love of wisdom. What is wisdom? The Pythagoreans thought knowledge about the universe. They looked out on the universe and they said, wow, something is much grander out there than we are. Maybe we should investigate it. The Sophists thought that if they taught people how to think in a certain way, and it wasn't the correct way, they knew that, they could get people into positions of virtue and power. They sounded smart. Socrates comes along and he sees a judge. He's out in the regular arena. We call it the quad. And he called the judge over and he says, by the way, he says, what is justice? And the judge, who's supposed to know he's a judge, would give a definition of justice. And Socrates would find fault with it and question. He said, well, what about this? Have you thought? Well, no, I haven't. And he leads him down this little trail until he makes him look like the fool that he is for believing the Sophists. The Sophists weren't teaching you knowledge. They were teaching you how to convince people you were smart so you could attain to positions of power. And finally, Socrates, he's the one we base the Western foundation on. Socrates said, your awareness of how ignorant you are is really the beginning of knowledge. Knowing we don't have a handle on as much as we think we do. As bright as we are, we really don't have a handle on what we think we do. Western philosophy, therefore, notice rational, reason. Reason is its centerpiece of Western philosophy. Is a rational attempt to formulate, understand, and answer fundamental questions. What are fundamental questions? They're primary questions. So, there's a video week one I didn't show to you. I expected you to look at. One of the fellows said, philosophers hear someone say, what causes cancer? And philosophers want to know, what is the cause anyway? Is it predicated on an event that produces another event? Does this cause this? And if it does, can we go backwards? How far back can we go until we find what we call a primary cause? And if there's a primary cause, we do this in the religious studies, and God is the origin of the beginning of everything. Where did God come from? Where is the origin of the primary source? Primary, radical, abstract, universal questions, the most basic questions that we can ask. So most of us, and this isn't a negative people, are preoccupied with what we call second and third level and fourth level questions. They're where we live. They're the world we live in. Philosophers try and go back to the foundation of knowledge, because if we've been deceived, whether it's intentional or not, and we end up believing second, third, and fourth level understanding, and it's not true, it has flaws in it, or it's just absolutely wrong, we live in that world, we might as well live in a matrix. It's not the really real world. So philosophy searches for knowledge through questions about fundamental nature of life and the very nature of knowledge and truth itself. We come up with thoughts like string theory I shared with you the first week, wormholes, multi-universes. How about the origin of humanity? Much of humanity believes that there's a deity source or aliens. If we sit down and you go through world religions and you study that out, many of them have origins of the gods who come down from the sky. I'm not talking about ancient aliens on TV. They have this recorded in their ancient texts. Well, they're not necessarily equal. It could be there is a divine source, or it could be that there are extraterrestrial creatures. Does that make a difference in who we are as humans? Does that make a difference to our identity, to the origin of who we are? And if they show up one day, what does that say? We've been taught to believe alien versus predator, right? Every alien that comes here wants us for lunch. Many of you know who Isaac Asimov was? He was a very famous science fiction writer. He wrote an interesting story one day called Childhood's End, and it opens up on the earth, and the earth is doing very well, no more diseases, people are well fed, it's a time of prosperity, it's a time of intellectual prowess. And the way it's come about is there's an alien ship that's visited the Earth and has been sending information down that's made life down here just incredibly, almost perfect. But they've never seen who's in there. The aliens have never revealed themselves. And finally, after all of this, I don't know if I'd call it progress, but all of this benefit from the ship and all the information they've sent us, they finally begged them, please, we want to know who you are. Please reveal yourselves to us. So they come down. And this is what they look like. They're reddish creatures with horns and a pointed tail. And they said, because of your mythology, if we had revealed ourselves in the beginning, this relationship never would have happened. It was to your benefit that we didn't. Because your false belief would have distanced you from not only the truth, but the benefit of knowing the truth. It's a really interesting story. But we never questioned those fundamentals. I'm not attacking religion. I mean, I'm just asking you to examine possibilities. Some people from religious background have a loving God and some have an angry God. Which one is right? Can there be a synthesis of the two? Do aliens always come to eat us for lunch, or could they really come to benefit? I don't have the answer to that. But just like global cooling, one day you may wake up and here they are. And whether you want to or not, you're going to deal with it. If we go into global cooling, I've talked to climatologists. They say between 10 and 100 years. I did the math. 2 miles of glaciers, 5,280 feet times 2, 11 inches of snow to make 1 inch of ice. I've done the math. If you divide it by 365 days over 100 years, it means we're only going to get 4 inches of snow a day. 4 inches of snow. 10 days later, we have 40 inches of snow. 8 inches short of 4 feet in 10 days. 20 days later, 80 inches. A little over 7 feet. You're not getting out the front door of your house. 30 days later, 12 feet of snow. And that's in the first month. And this can go on anywhere from 10 years to 100 years. It's just easier to believe it's not true. Let the next generation worry about it. Kick the debt down the road. Kick this down the road. Someone else will deal with it. In order to answer these questions, we turn to metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, and what we call axiology. What is of value? What's beauty? And what are moral values? Aesthetics, how do we distinguish between objective or subjective values? For instance, what is beauty? Now, how many of you had Mr. Insulaco? Mr. Insulaco believes there is beauty. Real beauty, unchangeable beauty. So did Plato. He said in some world that we'll never be able to go to, in the world of the forms, there's something called beauty out there. And it exists regardless of whether we can see it. We believe beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you and I look on someone and someone says, wow, nice work, and someone else goes, I don't see it at all. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Actually, beauty has nothing to do with your eyes, and it has nothing to do with your mind. Your bodies emit something called pheromones, P-H-E-R-M-O-N-E-S, that we can no longer consciously smell, but our bodies sense it, and that's the initial first attraction that we have to other people. And yet there's no